Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I apologise for anything that I might have done over the last few days and assume responsibility and hope that, everybody understands in that context. I also just really want to acknowledge M. Sexton and the team of Next Wave, because I think that was the most perfect way to enter this dialogue, and I think a lot of the topics that have come up, as everybody has pointed out, are difficult questions. And when you're an arts administrator, when you're an artist, when you're juggling a sort of love of the form and a love of the artist and a love of the work with all of the complicated things around stakeholders, around funding, around boards, around cross-cultural dialogue, around language, the one thing that always inspires me to keep going is just going and seeing some bloody work and being really inspired. And so thank you, Next Wave, for providing that as an entree into this discussion. And also, my session was on venues and spaces in Australia. Next Wave has always had a really adventurous and exciting approach to the way that art activates spaces and that art and spaces and audiences come into conversation with each other. So that was a really great place for us to start our conversation. And I must admit, when I got my topic for the roundtable, which was venues and spaces in Australia, simple to have a 15-minute discussion about that, I felt really disappointed because I guess the notion of a venue to me, and I work for an organisation that is based at an arts centre in Sydney. We're based at Carriageworks, but we also work site-specifically and across a whole range of different kinds of spaces. Our motto is every space is a performance space. So for me, just the term venue has a kind of slightly sort of daggy resonance to it, and this idea of a kind of a venue as being a sort of passive receptacle for a work that's fed to a passive or mollified audience and that doesn't have a kind of cultural context or critical dialogue around it. Those were the things that were going through my mind, but through the discussions, not only at my roundtable, but I think through the whole IETM meeting, the tendency that I'm hearing and that I'm greatly encouraged by is a sort of resistance to that idea, both from artists and from producers, and thankfully our funding bodies responding to that as well, that the idea, especially in a network like this, which is an international network, is not about selling product or touring product around between spaces or this kind of idea of a commodified work that is to be consumed, but art practice being a set of relationships and a set of negotiations and a set of understandings between individuals, of which you can have a more in-depth, revelatory, kind of transformative experience, and that we need to think about both the way that we make art and the way that we produce it in order to deepen that dialogue and make those connections more apparent and more complex, and to